So yeah, so this is also like a pretty challenging question. So basically in this question, we have like a function f for which f of x over 3 is equal to x squared plus x plus 1. And we want to find what is the sum of all values of z for which f of 3z is equal to 7. So like this is like kind of like a function question. So like for this kind of question, the idea is we want to start with, we're starting with the function f of x over 3 is equal to x squared plus x plus 1. So if we were to plug in, right, for this function, we can plug in any value of x that we want. So what if I let x equal like 9 times z, for example, right? I can let x equal be any value, right? So I can let x equals 9 times z. So if I were to plug it in, I get f of 9z divided by 3, which is 3z. And on the right side, I have 9z squared is 81z squared. And then plus x, which is 9z plus 1. And we want f of 3z to equal 7, right? So this has to equal 7. So now if we were to like kind of simplify this equation, we would get 81z squared plus 9z and then minus 6 equals 0, right? Just by subtracting 7 on both sides. And we look back at the question, and the question wants us to find the sum of all values of z for which that is true. So this is also like a very like common thing that you'll see where they give you some equation, right? In this case, we're left with this equation here. I want to find the sum of all values of z that satisfy this equation. So I guess one thing you can first do is you can divide the entire equation by 3 just to simplify it a little, right? So I can write this as 27z squared plus 3z minus 2 has to equal 0. So like we have like this like equation here, and there's something called like, one way you could do is you can directly solve the quadratic using something called like the quadratic formula, but like that's kind of like not cool. And the original question asked us, what is the sum of all values of z for which f of 3z equals 7? So like there's something called Vieta's formulas, and part of Vieta's formulas says that like if you have like this quadratic 27z squared plus 3z minus 2 equals 0, the sum of the values of z that work is always equal to negative of this coefficient divided by this coefficient. So like I won't like be proving why this is true, but like in general, like this is like a general formula, like why this, like how to do these kinds of questions, that if you have like a quadratic, the sum of the roots, the sum of all values of z that satisfy this equation is always equal to negative of the coefficient of the z, which is 3, divided by the coefficient of the z squared, which is 27. So this is just like a very good thing to know, like a general formula that like the sum of the values of z that work is equal to negative of the z coefficient divided by the z squared coefficient. So if we use Vieta's formulas here, we would just get like negative 1 over 9. And if we looked at back at our answer choices, that would be like choice B, which is the correct answer. And just as like a side note, it turns out Vieta's formulas also tell us that like if the original question, maybe instead of finding the sum of all values of z, maybe the question wants us to find like the product of all values of z. It turns out Vieta's formula says that the answer is going to be the constant term, negative 2, divided by the z squared coefficient, 27.